Hi, this time I am going to talk about why it's important to have accurate maps in tabletop role-playing games. This is going to be somewhat of a follow-up to a video that I made about maps yesterday. I'm going to put a link to that video in the description. Many things are revealed when it comes to accurately mapping the adventure environment. This is going to be a bit more focused on dungeon crawl type of experiences, but you can also apply this to any other adventure site. When it comes to keeping an accurate map, of course you want a grid or hex paper, because that way you can start to get a good idea of the dimensions of the rooms, the corridors, and this can be crucial. I am still sometimes surprised that there are people that play tabletop role-playing games out there that haven't enjoyed a good dungeon crawl experience. So I am going to mention 3 things that are revealed when you accurately handle maps. As you start to map the environment in which you are moving, you will see that there are some blank spaces, so to speak, some suspicious areas between the corridors and the rooms. A lot of RPG veterans already know what I am going to be talking about, but I still hope that, for example, someone that has forgotten about that or someone that is new to tabletop role-playing games, I hope they will get some benefit from this, and this is just the first element that is revealed. We'll talk about the other 2 in a few moments. But like I said, you start to think that some sections are a bit too suspicious. Why is there this huge gap between this room and this corridor? Is it the same? Do you identify the patterns that there is the same distance between all of the corridors? Maybe that's just the architecture of the adventure site. But what if there is a secret corridor passing between both of them? I love that sense of mystery. Sometimes it feels a bit creepy because, like, a secret corridor, why do they want to keep that corridor a secret? Maybe you feel excited about that, maybe there is treasure hidden there. So every time you start to draw your maps, pay special attention. If you are a player, this is of course a tip for the player characters. Pay special attention to those gaps, those empty spaces between the rooms and corridors. In the surrounding rooms and corridors, there could be some secret passageways or entryways that allow access into those hidden rooms, corridors, etc. Now let's talk about some more crucial aspects, some more advanced aspects. So you go into this complex, this underground labyrinth or whatever, and you start to move. You follow these zigzagging corridors. They are quite unique. They always zigzag. They have a certain texture to them. The walls are mysteriously slimy. And then you enter this room. It appears to be an empty room. There is perhaps some dungeon furniture or whatever, some suspicious looking objects, artifacts. So the party goes into the room, they start to investigate, and suddenly they hear like something locked behind them. That's why you need to spike things before you enter a room. Sometimes you want to put some metal spikes in the door so that they don't shut on you. And this is taking into consideration that perhaps you were thinking, let's go into this dangerous site, let's prepare, buying rations, water, bringing all sorts of gear, like I said, the spikes, crowbars if needed, hammers, whatever, ropes, 10-foot poles, and you're like, we're all set to go. And if we need something else, we just need to go back to the town or the city and resupply, and that's it. But then tragedy happens. Potential tragedy. Like I said, the door shuts down, is closed behind you, and maybe you start to hear this weird sound. And after a flash of light, all of the player characters appear in a different room. It's completely different from the other room, and it is perhaps almost completely empty. You are obviously the victim of a teleportation device or effect. How are you going to make it back? Where were you teleported to? Are you in the same level of the dungeon? Maybe a few levels below? Maybe you are now in very dangerous territory. Usually, the deeper the dungeon levels, the closer they are to the more dangerous monsters, the greater treasures. So now maybe you are in an environment where all of the enemies outclass you by a lot. Are you even in the same dungeon? Have you been teleported to another dungeon? Perhaps to a different time? Maybe you were teleported to the past or to the future, and the walls, everything looks so different. It looks dry, kind of like polished limestone sort of look to it. And you start to, you open perhaps the only door outside of this room, and the corridors look completely different. Panic ensues, especially if there is some sort of anti-magic effect or anti-psionic. It depends on the game. You cannot use those spells to teleport you back into the previous dungeon or adventure site, or get you back to town. There is something preventing you from that. Now comes despair. You start to move through the corridors, through the rooms. You start to battle foes that are too powerful for you. Maybe you need to make your escape several times. And you, just as when you are about to lose hope, then you open this door and you see these zigzagging corridors. And the walls look like I said, this slimy texture to them. This means that maybe there is a chance that you will be able to get back to the other room. You start to follow the zigzagging corridors, and voila, you start to recognize the corridors, and you feel such a great sense of relief and accomplishment that you have survived the ordeal. And thanks to your accurate map keeping, because you wrote down the zigzagging corridors, you recognize them, and now you are able to make it back to the safety of the town or the city. And now you have explored all of that other section of the dungeon, so it only resulted in benefits for the party of adventurers. So that's another reason why you want to keep accurate maps. You can recognize those other sections after you have been teleported or in some way taken away to some other section of the dungeon. But like I said, there could be some even more severe situations where you are in a different dungeon altogether and a different time. That's actually a really cool way of handling things in a more challenging way. Maybe you recognize some of maybe you enter the same zigzagging corridors, but you notice that they are no longer slimy. Maybe something happened that caused that supernatural sliminess, but because in this current time, the walls are quite dry. Maybe it's an event that is about to happen, or it happened several years back, and now the walls are not slimy anymore. Now, this other third thing that is revealed, sometimes you identify patterns when it comes to the threats within the dungeon. Areas that have a lot of traps, maybe those areas were fixed like that because the inhabitants of the adventure site want to keep intruders from a particular area potentially holding treasure. And it is because of your accurate placement of the map, of the traps in the map, that you are able to figure this out. Maybe you realize that some enemies are moving constantly through a particular set of corridors and rooms, and they are avoiding a particular site. Now you can start to think about why that is. Maybe there is a greater threat, and if those dangerous monsters are avoiding that section of the dungeon, perhaps it means that you want to avoid that section as well, because whatever is in there is more challenging than the monsters. Or maybe you see that there are many guards in a particular set of structures, perhaps an underground castle, some sections of the caverns, and you think those guards are placed there because if we follow the patterns going into that northeast direction, surely the mastermind, the one running things in this complex, in this strange labyrinth, he's probably residing there, and he has all of those guards, perhaps even traps placed in that section. So it's like a telltale sign or some indications that there is something either highly valuable in that particular direction or maybe something quite dangerous. So you identify things by going through your maps. You start to take a look at the sections. Maybe you made some small notes that this monster patrols these corridors, or you can find this sort of traps in this particular section. So it's thanks to your notes, to the icons that you use when you are mapping the dungeon that you identify these things. So yes, I think that it's worth it to keep track of those things, even if you want to keep your mapping as simple as possible on your notebook or whatever place that you are putting drawing the map on. It's going to pay off if the dungeon master or game master is a skilled dungeon master or game master. He's going to represent that semi-realistic dungeon environment, and you will start to figure out the logic behind things by analyzing the corridors, the rooms, etc. that you have just mapped. So those are my thoughts. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Did I miss some vital information? Because this is like a basic guide or primer. Maybe just please add in the comment section below or as a video response other things that are revealed when you are mapping the dungeon. I would love to know your thoughts on that. So once again, thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.